Hi, everybody. I'm Glenn Kennedy. This is my co-host, Charles
Glad
Mott.
to be here.
Welcome back to Barn Talk. So how you doing this morning, Charles?
I'm doing good. That morning fog kind of lifted. The sun came right out. It's a beautiful day.
It sure is.
We've had a lot of requests about Galster Park, and I know you know a lot about it, Glenn. Is it really haunted?
Okay. I've done a little bit of research on it. I've been up there at night, and I've never heard anything, but it is pretty spooky. I'll tell you that. I've had a lot of people tell me they've heard a lot of things. I will tell you what I do know. Before the Galsters owned it, it was part of the Molanders property.
Okay.
So the Centos, if you go to the crown of the San Jose Hill, the Centos family owned the south side, and the Molanders own the north side of it. So what I was told back in the early 1900s, there was a satanic murder up there with children, and it was done by the gypsies, and it left a black stain in this area, and that's why one of the reasons why it took another 15 years for West Community to actually become a city. So this is what I've been told, and I was told that it was had to do with Augie Amar and part of his family. However, I've looked at papers, I've done research on the LA Times, the Covina Argus. I found nothing, so I can't prove that statement. But, it's probably folklore history.
Yeah, that's right.
And it has probably been embellished over the years. But I feel there's probably is some type of truth to it, but I couldn't find it. So with that, I know there's been many suicides up there. There's been hangings up there. There's been gangland murders up there. I know a gang had taken over the park in the 80s and 90s, and there was executions up there. So obviously, yes, it probably is haunted.
Yeah.
I do know that that shed they said the creepy old man lived in. It's not a shed. It's to house the water pipes that go through there, and I don't even think a man could even actually fit in there. Mm-hmm. So I debunked that. I do know that the Boy Scout camp used to be at the top, mm-hmm. and the Girl Scout was going to be at the bottom. And when the Galsters purchased the property, I don't know what year, but it's probably in the 40s or 50s. And when she finally passed away, she gave the property to the city as a park, and with stipulations that it would be a wilderness center, and that it would be for the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Now, the scouting was big back in the 60s and 70s. It's not very big today, but that's what it was left for. And when they lived there, they lived on top of like a hill. So you have to go up Merced, up to Hillward, go all the way to the end where it cul-de-sacs, and they live on the right-hand side. But when they lived there was nothing there. I know San Jose Little League used to be there. Mm-hmm. And then when they built the shopping center at the corner of Roma, that was the old Market Basket.
The Market Basket. I remember.
Yeah, and Azusa used to end at Francisquito. So when it ended, it was like a dirt road, and then you veered off to the left,
sure.
As I remember. And when I was a Cub Scout, mm-hmm. They used to shoot. We used to have those rockets. We used to make the rockets and blow them up there.
Yeah,
and that's where we had all our scouting events. Pretty nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
And so now I don't know if the Sierra Club, the EPA, they all came in, and they designated that area as the sagebrush and the gnatcatcher.
Oh, yes.
So this is a protected species, along with the black walnut woodlands.
Yeah, very rare.
And it's a very rare plant.
Yes.
But it's there's a lot of story behind it. It's very toxic to like vegetables. Mm-hmm. Okay, so our forefathers came here, and they're all farmers. So what they did, they burned all that.
Yes.
Okay, so the black walnut, what it does, it gives off a toxin. I don't know if it destroys a nitrate in the soil, mm-hmm. but it kills all the vegetables.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. They burned it all, and I guess that's that part of the north side of the San Jose Hills, which it only grows on the north side. Mm-hmm. there's just only a few spots that are left.
Oh yes.
You know how the people are today. They come in and they see something that's dying off, and they make it where you can't touch it.
Yeah, so that's right.
The gnatcatcher is some type of bird, and it nests there in that coastal sage. So that will always be a wilderness center. It's pretty nice up there. I think it's a beautiful park, and then the city needs parkland, and I think it's nice. It was something nice that somebody did for the city, and I think it's absolutely great.
I do too. I think you can get a feeling of what our lower lands look like by our hills up there, because they were all that vegetarian was down here, and they had to burn it off and level this ground for farming. And I think you get a feeling it was rough work here.
Oh, absolutely,
absolutely. I mean, and dark and spooky.
Yeah,
And no, I think it really gives an idea of what West Covina and Covina and this area looked like when the pioneers first came here.
Yes.
And is there another center up there? Is there there are buildings up there? Am I correct?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's as you go to the park, there's a nature center and an observation tower.
Oh, that's it.
Okay. And then then the playground. You go into the parking lot. The playground's on the left, and then the trail starts. And you walk up the trail, and then you get to the first hill, and it's the Girl Scout camp. And there's a couple concrete pads up there and some tables. And then if you go straight up the hill, and that's one hell of a hike, you get to the back where the Boy Scout camp is. Now, they demolished it about 10 years ago or so. But when I went up there, I was taking off graffiti up there, and I had to use a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get up there. When I got up there, I couldn't do nothing because it probably had one of the world's largest beehives up there.
Okay.
I was swarmed with bees, and hell no, I wasn't going to get out and get stung to death. And so they end up, I don't know what they did with the honey because in the nest, but they end up knocking down the building. And now the only people that go up there, they just vandalize it. So
that's too bad.
It is too bad. It's left for the public, but they still do satanic rituals up there. That park is notorious for devil worshippers, and still is.
Still is.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Someday maybe they'll improve it and get some roads up there, but it will come in time, not remove everything.
Yeah, I really think. Well, there's one trail that goes all the way up. And then it ends, but it used to loop all the way around.
Okay.
And it was, I hate to say it, but it was poorly maintained, and I don't think that backside trail exists anymore, or they need to just clear it out.
Yeah, clear it out.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's one of those areas where you hear rainbirds running, but they really aren't rainbirds; they're little rattlers. So
that thing's full of rattlesnakes.
Oh, I bet it would be. Another place people have written in about is the hanging that took place there by the city hall on those hills, just between the city hall and the freeway. And I'd like to talk about that next time, and then talk about a local hero that I feel saved those trees from dying off. It was Bud Lyons, and he found the cure. Those trees were doomed in about another year or two, and he found the cure for the pine tip moth, which eventually was going to kill every pine tree in the valley here.
Yeah, I heard that. Well, why don't you tell us now, Charles?
Well, okay. Bud Lyons lived right down here on Francisquito, and he, with his wife, and they had 2 children that went to West Covina High, and he was a Christmas tree farmer. He had 100 acres of Christmas trees, and he leased that from California Edison. And the pine tip moth attacked all the pine trees in our parks. That was the biggest threat, and like that area up there by the city hall. And if you sprayed for the pine tip moth, if you were in agriculture, you put out the traps, and you had a certain time you had to spray, about 3 days. And they sprayed, well, this is interesting, with a vegetable oil, which would smother the eggs. See, there was no harm was being done to the environment. But you had to be such a perfect timing. But Bud kind of realized that if they did this, there was no way the public could do it. I mean, you just had to be within a couple days or 5 days of spraying. So Dr. Libby from Sacramento area and a young girl out in Riverside at the university, they decided to find a predator that would eat the pine tip moth. And that's the new thing about the 80s and 90s. So they researched for quite a few years, couple years. They found a predator, which was a male pine tip moth, and he would love to eat all the other moths. He was much bigger. He's kind of like they were the bumblebees and he was the wasp. So they planted him right there, put a whole experimental program right there on those pine trees, and by golly, it worked. So the university picked it up, and they made more of these little eaters, and they put them in all the parks throughout this valley, and we don't have the pine tip moth anymore. So it was kind of all the pine, what it would do, as the little fresh growth would come out on the end of the pines, and that moth would hatch, it would eat that. So it cut off any nutrition that was picked up by the sunlight. And eventually, the tree would then turn brown on the end. Of course, more moths would develop, and eventually the tree would die of lack of nutrition. I always kind of felt those three men could have found the cure for that beetle that was killing the trees in the forest, because, you know, they were remarkable. Dr. Libby was from Davis, and the young girl was out from Riverside, the university, and Bud was very knowledgeable. But by then, California Edison took his Christmas tree farms away from him, and Bud left the area. And I often thought that was quite a trio, those three. Otherwise, I don't believe we'd have any pine trees left in this valley.
Wow.
That's
very interesting, Charles.
Remember the oleanders all left us? They couldn't find a cure. Same thing.
Well, tell us about the hanging.
Oh, the hanging. Oh, well, we got off the subject, didn't we? Yeah. For a couple of weeks, the kids would come to school at share time, and they'd be sharing that there was a guy hanging in the forest up there on the hills, because, you know, that's kind of like no man land. The young kids were always riding their bikes back. It went on, and all at once, one teacher talked to a principal, and another principal talked to a principal and said, these kids are coming back to school, that there's a guy hanging from the tree up there. So he called the police, and I guess there was, because that's the last we heard of it, but I guess that'd be, it was sharing time, and every morning in the elementary schools, they'd share about this guy hanging from a tree.
Wow, you think you could smell him by then,
yeah,
right?
He was up there quite a while.
Wow.
And the principal was right over here that turned it in, and so I guess I never heard too much more than that, but somebody cut him down and took him home or whatever over Rose Hill. So
very interesting.
Yeah, that is. And what's nice is that we cured the hanging, got that solved, and Bud got the pine tip moth solved.
There you
and
go.
He lived right here in West Covina. So
yes, I remember Bud.
Yeah.
Nice anyway, guy. Well, thank you, Charles, for that.
You're
anyway,
welcome.
that does it for today. I'd like to thank you and have a nice day. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.